Okay, so there's nothing worse than a washer full of clothes that just won't start, and it's blinking that dreaded DE error at you. It is super frustrating, I know, but don't worry, we are going to walk through exactly how to figure this out and get it fixed.
Here's our game plan. First, we're going to figure out what that error code actually means. Then, we'll cover the first things you should try. No tools needed. After that, we'll take a closer look at the lock itself, pinpoint the exact problem, and finally, help you decide, is this a job for you, or is it time to call in a pro? All right, first things first, let's decode this thing, because once you understand what your washer is trying to tell you, you're already halfway to solving the problem. So the good news is DE doesn't mean your machine is toast. It simply means door error. Think of it this way. Your washer's brain, the main control board, has a safety checklist. And right now, it can't check off door is safely locked. So, for your safety, it's refusing to start. Our job is to figure out why.
Now this is where it gets interesting. Some washers give you even more specific clues. If you just see DE, it's a general door problem. But if it says dE2, your washer is telling you, hey, I tried to lock the door, but I'm not convinced it worked. And dE3 is the opposite. Help, the door is locked and now I can't get it unlocked. These little codes are a huge help.
Okay, let's move on. Before you even think about grabbing a screwdriver, there are a few super simple things you can try that might solve this whole issue in like the next 5 minutes. First, the oldest trick in the tech support book, unplug it. Seriously, pull the plug from the wall, go make a cup of coffee, and wait a full 5 minutes. This lets the machine's little computer brain fully reset. Then, plug it back in. If the door is still stuck shut, your next mission is to find the manual release tab. It's usually hiding behind that little access door at the bottom of the washer. Whoa, stop. Before you pull that tab, this is really important. If your cycle stopped midway, that drum could be full of water. So unless you want an impromptu swimming pool in your laundry room, grab a whole bunch of towels and be ready for a splashdown. Okay, once the door's open, play detective. Look around the big rubber seal. Is a stray sock making a break for it? Anything blocking the latch? Clear it out. Then close the door firmly, give it a good push, and try to start a cycle. And now, listen, really listen. You should hear a nice, solid click. If you hear nothing, just silence, well, that's a pretty big clue that the lock itself has a problem. All right, so the easy stuff didn't work. No problem. That just means it's time to roll up our sleeves and take a closer look at the actual door lock assembly. And I'm going to say this again because I cannot say it enough. Before you take one more step, please unplug your washer. We're about to look at electrical parts, and your safety is the #1 thing here. So once you can see the lock assembly, use your best tools, your eyes and your notes. I'm serious. Look for any little black scorch marks, any melted-looking plastic or cracks in the housing, and then take a good sniff. If you smell that nasty, distinct smell of burnt electronics, well, you've probably found your culprit. Okay, so if everything looks and smells fine, we need to go one level deeper. And to do that, you're going to need a multimeter. This is the tool that gives us a definite answer. If you don't have one or aren't comfortable using one, that's totally fine. This is just that point where you might start thinking about calling a pro. All right, for those of you with a multimeter, let's get our final answer. We're about to test the lock's components and find out for sure what's going on in there. So what you're going to do is test the lock motor itself. Unplug its little wiring harness. Set your multimeter to ohms, that's the little horseshoe symbol, and touch the probes to the motor's terminals. A healthy motor will give you a reading somewhere between 100 and 500 ohms. If your meter says OL or shows a 0, bingo, that's a failed motor. It's either burned out or shorted, and either way, that whole assembly needs to be replaced. This table right here puts it all together perfectly. If that multimeter test failed, you need a new lock assembly. Done. If you saw that burnt or melted connector, you'll need to replace that. If you had that specific dE3 code, maybe the mechanism is just stuck and needs a good cleaning. And in some rare cases, if everything else checks out, the problem could actually be the washer's main brain, the control board. So, you've done the detective work. You know what's broken. Now comes the big question. Are you going to fix this yourself, or is it time to call for backup? Let's break it down. If you're going the DIY route, here's some good news. The part you most likely need, that door lock assembly, is actually pretty affordable. You're typically looking at somewhere between $40 and $100, depending on your model. On the flip side, calling a professional is going to cost more, of course. You're paying for their time and their expertise. You can expect the final bill, including the part and the labor, to land somewhere in the $200 to $400 range.
So how do you know when to just make the call? Well, here's a good checklist. If your washer is throwing multiple crazy error codes, not just the dE, or if your tests point to the main control board, if the wiring looks really fried, or if that emergency release tab didn't even work, those are all great signs that it's time to let an experienced pro take over.
And there you have it. You know what the dE error is all about, you know the first checks to make, and you know how to test the parts to find the exact problem. You now have all the information you need to choose your path. So the only question left is, are you ready to get that washer running again?